The sound of steel doors clanging shut echoed through the cold hallways of ADX Florence. Inside those walls sat men whose names made headlines across the world. Among them was Joaquín, El Chapo, Guzmán, the infamous Mexican drug lord known for escaping prisons in Mexico with secret tunnels and bribes. But here, at America's most secure prison, there were no tunnels to dig and no guards to pay off. El Chapo was locked in a small concrete cell, with a narrow slit window that only showed a piece of the sky. Every movement he made was tracked, every word he spoke monitored, and every meal slid through a slot in his door. He was trapped in a world designed to erase freedom, control power, and end the possibility of escape, but El Chapo was not alone in notoriety. Down another wing, Ted Kaczynski, the Unabomber, sat in his cell, a figure who once terrorized America with bombs sent through the mail. He, too, lived in almost total silence, his life reduced to routines measured by the hour. Unlike El Chapo, whose empire was vast and violent, Kaczynski's danger lay in his mind, his ability to inspire followers even from behind bars. ADX Florence had been built for men exactly like them, criminals too dangerous, too connected, or too clever to be trusted in any ordinary prison. The prison's design left no detail to chance. Each inmate spent 23 hours a day in isolation, with 1 hour of exercise in a concrete pen no bigger than a dog run. Even then, they could not see other prisoners. It was total separation, meant to cut off communication and prevent gangs, cartels, or radical ideas from spreading inside the walls. For El Chapo, who once commanded thousands of men from the shadows, this isolation was a punishment greater than chains. For Kaczynski, who thrived on writing manifestos and sending his words across the country, silence was a prison harsher than bars. Yet the story of these two men inside ADX created a sense of tension that rippled beyond its walls. Guards whispered about the extra precautions taken with El Chapo, how even his showers were scheduled to prevent contact, how security teams checked every corner before he was moved. Others spoke about the strange, quiet presence of Kaczynski, a man who once outsmarted the FBI for nearly 2 decades, now reduced to pacing in a cell. And then came the moment that shook even the toughest correctional officers. One of these men managed to send a message from inside ADX Florence, despite the layers of isolation and surveillance. No one knew how it got out or who helped, but the message was clear: El Chapo's reach was not completely broken. Was ADX Florence as secure as it claimed to be? Could even America's toughest Supermax stop men like him from bending the rules of captivity? The truth behind that breach would expose just how fragile control could be, even inside the prison known as the Alcatraz of the Rockies. And that night, when the prison alarms blared louder than ever before, the question hung in the air: had ADX Florence underestimated its most dangerous inmates? The story continues in Chapter 2. The alarm still echoed through the corridors of ADX Florence long after the incident. Red lights flashed in the control room, and guards in tactical vests rushed through the prison's narrow walkways, their radios buzzing with urgent voices. For years, the Bureau of Prisons had insisted that ADX was escape-proof, leak-proof, and impenetrable. But the discovery of a secret message, allegedly sent from inside one of the most secure cells in America, shattered that confidence. No one knew who was responsible. Was it El Chapo, the master of tunnels and bribes, flexing his reach from behind concrete and steel? Or was it Ted Kaczynski, the quiet Unabomber, whose mind was sharp enough to find weaknesses others missed? The uncertainty terrified staff. If a message could leave, what else might escape? Could orders still flow to the cartels, the gangs, or radical groups on the outside? The investigation began immediately. Every guard, every mail handler, every food delivery was scrutinized. Cells were torn apart, pages of letters confiscated, even the cracks in the walls checked for hidden codes. Inmates were stripped of privileges, their exercise hours cut back, their access to books and paper restricted. The prison tightened its already suffocating grip. Yet with each new restriction, the air inside ADX Florence grew heavier, and the inmates more restless. El Chapo was watched with extra eyes. Guards said he stared at them through the slot in his door with a look that was neither angry nor defeated, just calculating. It was the same look, they whispered, that must have burned in his eyes when he planned his escape tunnels in Mexico. For a man who once commanded armies, being trapped in silence was unbearable, but it didn't mean he had given up. Meanwhile, Kaczynski remained unervingly calm. He had always lived in solitude, and isolation was nothing new to him. Some guards feared he might be behind the breach, using hidden codes and letters or exploiting overlooked loopholes in the system. But when questioned, he simply smirked and said nothing. His silence was louder than words. The truth was, ADX Florence was designed not just to contain bodies, but to crush spirits. The walls were built to keep inmates from ever touching another human being again. Yet, that night, when the alarms rang, the prison learned something it didn't want to admit. Then in total isolation, men like El Chapo and the Unabomber were still dangerous. Rumors began to swirl. Some said a guard had been bribed. Others believed an inmate had cleverly disguised a message in an innocent-looking letter to family. And then came the chilling possibility: what if someone on the outside was working with someone inside? The warden ordered a lockdown, the kind where every door slammed shut, and no one moves unless escorted by armed guards. The prison went silent, but beneath that silence was a pulse of fear. The kind of fear that grows when you realize control isn't as complete as you thought. And then, just days after the first message was discovered, another shock followed. A letter surfaced outside the prison, traced back to ADX Florence. This one contained detailed knowledge of guard rotations and security blind spots, information no inmate should have known. The question now was no longer if ADX Florence had been breached. It was how deep the breach went, and who was orchestrating it. The story will continue. The second letter changed everything. It wasn't just about words smuggled out, it was proof that someone inside ADX Florence had eyes on the prison's most guarded secrets. The letter described guard rotations down to the minute, which corridors were least patrolled, and even which cameras had blind spots during maintenance cycles. Information like that didn't come from an inmate staring at 4 blank concrete walls. It had to come from someone on the inside. The warden's office turned into a war room. Maps of the facility were pinned to the walls, lines of red marker tracing possible leak points. FBI agents were flown in overnight. They grilled guards for hours, checked bank accounts for sudden deposits, and monitored every staff member's phone calls. Paranoia spread like wildfire. Guards who once trusted each other now exchanged old stares, wondering if the man walking beside them was the weak link. Meanwhile, inside their cells, the inmates noticed the tension. They felt it in the way guards barked orders sharper than before, in the way their food trays were slammed harder through the slots, and in the way their exercise yards went eerily quiet. To some inmates, it was a sign of chaos, a crack in the armor of a fortress that was supposed to be unbreakable. And in prison, cracks were opportunities. El Chapo was at the center of the rumors. Guards whispered that this had his fingerprints all over it. He had escaped from 2 maximum security prisons in Mexico, once through a mile-long tunnel dug right to his shower. If anyone could find a way to bend ADX to his will, it was him. His cartel still had billions in reach, enough to tempt even the most disciplined guard. Each glance he gave from behind the slot of his steel door made the staff uneasy, as if he knew more than he should, but others suspected the quiet one, Ted Kaczynski. The Unabomber didn't need tunnels or bribes. He was a mastermind of codes, patterns, and puzzles. Even in total isolation, he could find weaknesses in a system built on rules. A hidden cipher in a letter, a mathematical pattern tucked inside ordinary writing. Who would notice until it was too late? And if he wasn't the one sending messages, maybe he was teaching others how. The FBI widened the scope. They tapped into mailrooms, rescreened every letter sent to and from ADX, and reread thousands of pages of correspondence that had been approved in the past. Then came the chilling discovery: subtle phrases repeated across different inmates' letters, phrases that looked ordinary to a casual reader but, when connected, formed coded instructions. The code linked back to one block of cells. And in that block was a mix of some of the most feared names in America. Terrorists, gang leaders, cartel lieutenants. Men who were supposed to be cut off from the world, but who had clearly found a way to whisper to it again. The discovery sent shockwaves through Washington. If these men could send messages out, what orders could they give? Hits on the outside? Drug shipments? Coordinated violence in other prisons? ADX Florence's reputation as escape-proof was no longer the question. The real fear was that it might be control-proof. To reassert dominance, the warden ordered the most extreme response possible, an unprecedented lockdown. All inmate privileges, books, radios, exercise, were stripped away. Meals were delivered late, water was shut off for hours, and cells were searched day and night. It was meant to break any chain of communication. But the harsher the lockdown became, the more restless the inmates grew. Guards reported seeing fists slam against steel doors, voices yelling into the void, and eyes burning with defiance through tiny slots, and then came the breaking point. During a nighttime cell search, a guard stumbled upon something terrifying, not a weapon, but a hand-drawn map of ADX Florence itself, complete with marks for security weak points. It was hidden in the false bottom of a legal folder, a place no one thought to check before. The map raised the darkest question yet: was someone inside preparing for the unthinkable, a coordinated escape attempt from America's most secure prison? To be continued.